I want to begin tonight by asking you something you may never have truly asked yourself. How much of your life have you spent suffering over things that weren't yours to carry? I was walking through Stanford Science Building late one evening, exhausted, holding a cup of black coffee, and staring at a wall full of brain scans. My mind wasn't on the research. It was on something a friend had said to me earlier that day. Something passive-aggressive, something petty. And I couldn't stop thinking about it, obsessing over it, wondering what I did wrong, wondering why I cared so much, to feel seen, to feel heard, to know that your heart isn't invisible in a room full of people. That's not weakness. That's biology. We are wired, literally hardwired, to seek connection. It's built into the very fabric of the human brain. Mirror neurons, specialized cells in our motor cortex, allow us to feel what others feel. When someone cries, your brain fires the same emotional signature that registers as sadness in your own body. When someone judges you, the emotional centers of your brain respond as if you're physically under attack. But here's where the truth gets heavy. Empathy in excess is not just a strength, it's a trap. And for many of us, it's become a cage we don't even realize we're locked inside of. I've spent years studying the brain under pressure, watching people navigate grief, anxiety, social rejection, betrayal. And I can tell you something that may surprise you. Some of the most compassionate, kind-hearted people I've ever met were also the most emotionally exhausted because they had never learned how to draw the line between empathy and identity. You can care about people without carrying them. You can love someone without becoming their emotional landfill. You can show up with compassion and still walk away your peace intact, but only if you understand what's actually happening inside your nervous system. You see, when you overcare, when you obsess about what people think, how they feel about you, whether they approve of you, you activate the brain's default mode network. That's the part of the brain responsible for internal storytelling. Did I say the wrong thing? Are they mad at me? Maybe I should have been more agreeable. This system, when overactivated, leads to chronic self-surveillance. You're not living, you're watching yourself live. And that constant inner noise triggers your amygdala, the brain's fear response system. Suddenly, your body is flooded with cortisol, your heart rate increases, your focus narrows, your body prepares for conflict, even if none exists. Here's the worst part: you get used to it. You normalize anxiety, you normalize emotional exhaustion. You normalize silence, overthinking, faking a smile, pretending everything's okay. But deep down, your body is screaming for peace. Overcaring is not just emotional fatigue. It is a form of trauma repetition. It comes from a childhood, a heartbreak, a betrayal, a pattern where your brain learned that your safety, your worth, depended on being accepted, being perfect. And unless you address that root, you'll keep playing a role in everyone else's life while completely forgetting your own. This is why learning to act like you don't care isn't cold. It's healing. You're not shutting down your heart. You're reclaiming your nervous system. You're saying, I no longer allow my mind to be hijacked by what isn't mine. I had a student once, brilliant, empathetic, always available for everyone. But every month, she'd burn out. I asked her, what if the exhaustion you're feeling isn't from giving too much, but from not protecting your energy at all? That hit her, and maybe hits you too. You are not selfish for pulling back. You are not arrogant for protecting your mental clarity. You are not a bad person for no longer over-functioning in relationships that don't see you. Your brain was designed for focus. But over-caring creates fragmentation. You lose your ability to regulate your emotions. You second-guess your intuitions. You stay in places long after your soul has left, just to avoid hurting someone else. But what about you? When was the last time you asked yourself, who's protecting me? Who's checking on me the way I check on others? Who's helping me reset when my nervous system is in a state of silent emergency? If the answer is no one, then I want to give you permission, scientifically and spiritually, to let go, not of compassion, but of self-abandonment. You are allowed to care less about what they think, so you can care more about how you feel. You are allowed to protect your peace, even if it means disappointing others. You are allowed to breathe, to pause, to walk away. Not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, because a calm brain is a powerful brain. And when your brain is no longer tangled in emotional warfare, you can think clearly, you can dream again, you can lead again, you can live again. You don't stop caring, you just stop leaking care into places that only return emptiness. Empathy is beautiful, but when it becomes unregulated, it becomes a cage. And today, I want you to open that door. Walk out And never apologize for choosing peace over performance. There's a sacred moment between what happens to you and how you respond. It's a fraction of a second, barely noticeable. But in that moment, you hold unimaginable power. That moment is called the pause. And the pause is where your freedom lies. Most people never find it. Most people live life in reaction mode. Someone insults them. They lash back. Someone rejects them. They spiral. A look, a text, a tone, and suddenly their nervous system is hijacked. Their day is ruined, their mind is racing, their breath becomes shallow. It happens so fast that it feels automatic. But it's not automatic, it's a pattern. And patterns can be rewired. In the neuroscience world, we call this the space between stimulus and response, and it's regulated by the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that governs decision-making, self-control, and future planning. The stronger this region becomes, the more capable you are of staying calm when everything around you demands that you lose control. Emotional detachment doesn't mean becoming indifferent or distant. It means becoming intentional. It means choosing peace over drama. It means no longer letting your mood be dictated by every careless comment, every rejection, every wave of negativity thrown your way. Years ago, I was observing a Navy SEAL team in underwater training. The environment was chaotic: cold water, unpredictable movements, deliberate disorientation. One trainee remained eerily calm, even when his oxygen line was yanked away as part of the exercise. When I asked him later how he stayed composed, he said something I've never forgotten: you don't win by reacting. You win by pausing. That's not just a military principle. That's life. How many times have you lost yourself in moments that didn't deserve your energy? How many times have you replayed a conversation, a misunderstanding, a wound, over and over, because you reacted in the heat of emotion instead of responding with clarity? Emotional detachment is about reclaiming your center. It's about recognizing that not everything deserves a response, and even fewer things deserve your peace. This isn't easy, especially if you've spent your life being the one who fixes, explains, defends, or pleases. You might feel guilty for not replying. You might feel like you're being rude for setting distance. But that guilt, that discomfort, it's not truth. It's conditioning. You were taught to keep the peace by losing your own. You were taught to be the bigger person, even when others were small with you. You were taught to always answer, always fix, always stay. But now you are learning something greater. You are allowed to pause, to reflect, to remain still when the world tries to shake you. In practical terms, here's what happens when you master the pause: your amygdala, the emotional alarm center of the brain, begins to quiet. Your parasympathetic nervous system takes over, regulating your heart rate, restoring your breath, bringing you back to balance. And in that state, you don't just survive conflict, you rise above it. When you pause, you give yourself time to think. Is this worth my energy? Do I want to let this into my mental space? Does responding make me feel powerful, or does it drain me? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can dog is nothing at all. No explanation, no defense, no reaction, just breath, just presence. Stillness is not weakness, it's precision. Stillness is how you conserve energy for the battles that actually matter. Stillness is how you hold on to your identity when others try to pull you into chaos. I've seen this play out in therapy sessions, in military strategy rooms, in board meetings, and in marriages. The people who win, emotionally, professionally, spiritually, are not the ones who fight the most. They're the ones who've learned when not to fight at all, because not every war is worth waging. And sometimes silence is louder than anything you could say. This level of control doesn't make you cold. It makes you wise. It means you've stopped letting temporary people cause permanent damage. It means you've stopped letting your nervous system be rented out by every text message, every headline, every mood swing of someone else. So if you find yourself triggered, pause. If you feel provoked, pause. If you want to explain yourself just to feel validated, pause. Because in the pause, you return to yourself. You return to your breath, you return to your truth. And that's where your power is. Not in the proving, not the pleasing in the performing, but in the pause. And once you master that, you'll stop being reactive and start being unstoppable. At some point in your life, someone made you feel like you weren't enough. Maybe it was subtle, a tone, a pause, a raised eyebrow, or maybe it was loud, a rejection letter, a breakup text, a cold silence that echoed for weeks. And without even realizing it, your brain did what it's wired to do. It internalized the experience. It labeled it as personal. And suddenly, it wasn't just that someone rejected you. It was that you were now rejected, not your idea, not your effort, you. That right there is where the damage begins. The human brain, especially the social brain, is incredibly sensitive to criticism and exclusion. Functional MRI studies show that social rejection activates the exact same neural pathways as physical pain. When someone says, "You're not good enough," your brain doesn't just interpret it as words. It interprets it as threat. But here's the twist: that pain you feel when judged or criticized isn't proof that it's true. It's proof that you care. And that care, when it's unguarded, becomes your greatest vulnerability. What we rarely learn is that most rejection has very little to do with us. People reject what they don't understand. They criticize what threatens their ego. They judge through the lens of their own pain, insecurities, and limitations. Think about it. How often has someone rejected you because they simply didn't know how to love what didn't mirror them? How often has someone criticized your boldness because it highlighted their fear? How often has someone judged your path, not because it's wrong, but because it reminded them of the path they were too afraid to take? You are not their mirror. You are not their therapist. And you are not their projection screen. Yet at every time you accept someone's judgment as truth, you give away your power. You start editing yourself to be more palatable, more likable, more acceptable. You shrink to fit into boxes you were never meant to enter. Let me be clear: rejection is often redirection. Criticism is often misdirection. And judgment is often self-protection. On their part, not yours. You cannot live a full, powerful, authentic life and still avoid being misunderstood. You cannot be bold and invisible at the same time. And if your goal is to be loved by everyone, you will eventually forget how to love yourself. So let them misunderstand you. Let them question your choices. Let them criticize from the sidelines. Because the moment you stop reacting to every opinion, something incredible happens inside your brain. Your prefrontal cortex strengthens. Your amygdala calms down. Your emotional regulation increases. And you start making decisions based on who you are, not based on how they see you. You don't have to respond to every critique. You don't have to defend every move. You don't have to win their approval to validate your path. The truth is, most of the loudest critics in your life aren't doing better than you. They're just louder. And in many cases, their judgment is just a reflection of a conversation they refuse to have with themselves. You are not required to carry that. So today I want you to release it. Release the weight of other people's opinions. Release the scars of rejection that never belonged to you. Release the pressure to explain your heart to those committed to misunderstanding it. Because once you stop owning what was never yours to begin with, you create space. Space for self-trust, space for confidence, space for peace. Rejection is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of someone's capacity. And their capacity has nothing to do with your calling. You're still chosen. You're still becoming. You're still enough. Even if they never see it. There's a moment in everyone's life when they're realizing being liked by everyone is a very lonely place to live. Because in trying to be agreeable, pleasing, available, and endlessly understanding, you slowly erase yourself. You stop being a person with needs, limitations, and preferences. You become a role the helper, the fixer, the forgiver, the strong one. And for a while, it feels good. You feel valuable, needed, loved. Until one day you wake up exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. You've stretched yourself so thin that you can't even hear your own thoughts. You've said yes so many times that no now feels like betrayal. But the only betrayal that ever occurred was the one you made against yourself. This is what life without boundaries looks like. And make no mistake, the nervous system keeps score. Every time you override your truth to make someone else comfortable, you create dissonance inside your brain. Every time you suppress your discomfort to avoid conflict, you send your body into survival mode. You smile on the outside, but inside, your sympathetic nervous system is firing like you're in danger. And that's not just metaphor, that's neuroscience. Chronic people, pleasing creates chronic stress. It raises cortisol levels, disrupts sleep, shortens your attention span, and weakens your immune system. Not because kindness is bad, but because self-betrayal is devastating. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself in. They are the way you protect your focus, your peace, your energy, and your worth. They say, this is where I end and you begin. This is what I will allow and what I will not. This is the version of me I refuse to sacrifice, even if it makes you uncomfortable. It's easy to confuse boundaries with walls, but walls are built from fear. Boundaries are built from clarity. Walls push people away because you're scared. Boundaries invite the right people in because you respect yourself. And people feel that when you begin to enforce boundaries, when you start saying no, When you stop over-explaining, when you protect your time, you'll notice something revealing. Some people will respect you more. Some people will resent you instantly. Let them. Because how people respond to your boundaries is not your responsibility. It's their reflection. Some will be confused, even angry, because the version of you they benefited from was the one with no boundaries, and that version of you no longer exists. That's growth. I once worked with a high-achieving client, a physician, a mother, a leader, who was admired by everyone but falling apart inside. She couldn't say no. She couldn't unplug. She couldn't rest without guilt. And underneath her success was a terrified inner child who thought, if I don't give more, I won't be loved. We didn't start with therapy. We started with boundaries. Tiny ones, saying, I'll get back to you, instead of giving an immediate yes. Taking a walk without her phone. Ending meetings on time. Protecting 15 minutes of silence each morning. Non-negotiable. And slowly, she began to breathe again. She began to remember who she was before the world told her who to be. Because boundaries aren't rules. They're reminders of what matters most. And what matters most is not being liked. It's being real, being rooted, being respected by others, yes. But first and foremost step by yourself. You teach people how to treat you through what you allow. You teach your brain what you value through what you protect. You teach your future what you're worth by what you tolerate in your present. So if you're tired, angry, resentful, don't just fix your schedule. Fix your boundaries. Say no, even when your voice shakes. Leave the room, even when your legs tremble. Speak your truth, even if your hands sweat. Not to prove anything, but to remind yourself, I am allowed to exist without performing. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to you. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your life. You are allowed to be kind and unavailable. You are allowed to krieg and not carry. Because boundaries don't disconnect you from others. They reconnect you to you. And when you come home to yourself, finally, fully, you'll wonder why you ever left. There is a kind of power that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't chase. It doesn't prove. It doesn't panic. It's the kind of power that sits calmly in the middle of chaos and refuses to move. That power is called stillness. And in a world addicted to noise, speed, reaction, and validation, stillness almost looks like weakness. But it's not. Stillness is a nervous system that knows it's safe. Stillness is a mind that knows it doesn't have to perform to be valuable. Stillness is a life lived from the inside out, not the outside in. The truth is, we live in a culture of urgency. You're expected to respond quickly, post instantly, defend yourself immediately, explain everything to everyone as if their understanding of you is a requirement for your peace. But that's a trap. Because when you live on edge, constantly reacting to what's around you, you become a slave to other people's energy. You walk into a room and your mood shifts based on who's there. You open your phone and your spirit deflates based on what you see. You hear a rumor, feel a tone, get overlooked, and suddenly your day is ruined. This is what happens when your stillness is untrained. And in neuroscience, we see this clearly. People who lack emotional regulation often live in sympathetic overdrive. Their fight or flight system is constantly activated. Their cortisol is high. Their sleep is broken. Their concentration scattered. Their breath shallow. They're surviving, not living. But the good news is this: stillness is not a gift. It's a discipline. It's something you can build. It starts in the smallest moments. When someone says something cruel and you don't explain yourself. When someone tries to bait you into conflict and you don't bite. When the world is loud, but you stay quiet inside. That pause. That refusal to be disturbed. That's not weakness. That's nervous system mastery. There's a quote I often come back to. The lion doesn't turn when the small dog barks. And neither should you. When you truly understand who you are, when you've done the inner work, when your peace is no longer dependent on external validation, then silence becomes your first language. You begin to realize not everything requires your energy. Not every invitation is worth attending. Not every opinion is worth absorbing. I once sat across from a high-level athlete, a world champion, who was facing heavy public criticism. It was all over the news. He was being dragged online. Everyone had something to say. I asked him how he was coping. He looked me in the eye and said, I didn't come here to respond. I came here to win. That hit me like a bolt of lightning. Because winning, real winning, isn't just about outperforming others. It's about lasting distraction, outlasting disrespect, outlasting drama. And the only way to do that is to be undisturbed. Stillness doesn't mean inaction. Stillness means you're so grounded that your actions come from clarity, not chaos. It means you move with intention. Not out of anger, fear, or insecurity, but out of deep inner conviction. Stillness is the refusal to let external turbulence rewrite your internal truth. It is a physiological state, what we call parasympathetic dominance, where your body returns to safety, your breath slows, your thinking sharpens, your intuition speaks louder. You can build this stillness in practical ways, through morning solitude, through deep breathing, cold exposure, journaling, long walks with no noise, by sitting quietly for 10 minutes and simply not reacting to anything. And the more you do this, the more your brain learns we are safe. We do not need to defend. We are allowed to simply be. The world may never reward you for being calm, but your future will, your clarity will. Because here's the ultimate truth: you don't have to chase closure. You don't have to win every argument. You don't have to respond to every misunderstanding. You don't have to prove your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You just have to stay still, rooted, focused, unbothered, not out of ego, but out of sacred preservation. Stillness is power. It is the space where you meet your highest self, where wisdom speaks. Noise fades, where the storms may rage around you, but never inside you. And once you taste that kind of calm, you will never trade it for attention again.